Kia ora, bula, kia rana, malaulele, talofa, and welcome to Two Palagi and a Piece and Easy Pod. My name's Glenn Murphy. Here I am on Waiheke Island, my own little piece of the Pacific. And Dave, great to be with you for another week.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Kia ora na koutou katoa toa, pogima nea. And I suppose that today we should also say bonjour as a little bit of a clue to what we'll be talking about on today's show. To everyone listening in, my name is David Dewar, and together with Glenn, he and I have been working across the Pacific for the past 5 years, first in Suva and now from my base in Rarotonga, and in Glenn's case, Australia, and now Waiheke Island, New Zealand, helping New Zealand, Australian and Pacific businesses understand this fantastic part of the world. And it is wonderful to be doing so again through this weekly podcast.
And Dave, building on your little clue, the bonjour, today we are going to be talking about the French Pacific, and we're very lucky to have had a talanoa with Agnes Baekelandt, who is the Vice President of the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce and also the CEO at Barkers of Geraldine. So we'll have that talanoa shortly, and we'll learn a lot about the French Pacific, Dave, which I was fascinated with because I did not realise how important it is economically.
The French Pacific is, of course, a very, very significant economy and part of this region. And I won't give away too many spoilers, but the combined GDP of the French Pacific significantly exceeds Fiji's, which might come as a surprise to people. But of course, French Polynesia, which is really just one part of the French Pacific, is itself number 2 for New Zealand as an export destination. So what better person to talk about it than Agnes Baekelandt, because of course, as you've alluded to, Glenn, she is the Vice President of the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. As we will hear in the talanoa, someone with huge experience and passion for this part of the region and for the Pacific as a whole. Agnes also has a very strong family connection to Vanuatu. So yeah, really exciting conversation, and I know our listeners will get a lot out of it.
So Dave, before we get into that talanoa, you were talking before we started recording that today's a huge day in the Cook Islands.
It is, Glenn. Yeah, a slight tangent, I suppose, or on something completely different. The Cook Islands, of course, is today kicking off the celebrations for its upcoming National Day. The National Day of the Cook Islands is the 4th of August, and ahead of that, the overall celebration is called Te Maiva Nui. It's a big celebration of dance and culture. The other 14 outer islands descend on Rarotonga with teams and people competing, showcasing all of their culture throughout town in a series of presentations and dance competitions. And it kicks off today with a parade through town. And on the lead float, I've got the 2 boys. My 2 sons are going to be participating in the float for the traditional games, which is a competition between some of the islands, not just in Cook's, but also, in fact, French Polynesia nearby. And they compete on things like climbing coconut trees, carrying bunches of bananas, lifting giant rocks, all of the sort of stuff that people did for fun, I suppose, before colonial times. And so the boys will be decked out today in the traditional gear and carrying bunches of bananas. And I think their main excitement part was throwing out lollies to the crowd, though.
And are you going to go in the banana eating competition at the end of it?
I might be in the lolly moderation competition at the end of that. So we'll have to see just how many they end up with in their own pockets and how I control that later this afternoon.
Excellent. Oh, well, good luck with that. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, and particularly for the boys. Meanwhile, for me, after this, I'm heading off to my first board meeting for the Walking Waiheke Charitable Trust that I'm now a trustee of. So that's excitement for my day to understand how we get more people out on the island enjoying the wonderful trails that are all around this place and the fantastic views that Waiheke offers. It's not just about wine and restaurants.
Someone who's clearly got a passion for walking as well as the ancillary pursuits of walking and the wine. I think that's a great move for you. And some of your walking buddies are some reasonably well-known names in New Zealand and around the Pacific, and I think we may hopefully one day feature some of them on the show.
I would love to, so we'll see what I can do with that. In the meantime, let's walk into the talanoa with Agnes.
So today we're looking at a part of the Pacific that many business people across New Zealand and Australia and even around the region perhaps don't think about or seem to think about as often as they probably could. That is, of course, the French Pacific. I was talking to Glenn before we came onto the show today, and one of the fun facts about the French Pacific, which of course comprises the territories of New Caledonia and French Polynesia, as well as Wallis and Fortuna, it's actually a combined GDP larger than Fiji. A population of around 500,000 and a very, very wealthy per capita GDP. And if you look at New Zealand's own trading partners across the Pacific region, it's perhaps, well, surprisingly for some people, it's our number 2 export market in the Pacific region. So it is an incredibly important, significant, and broad-ranging market in the Pacific, yet one that perhaps people, when they think of this region through a trade or economic lens, don't tend to think about quite so often. Our guest today, of course, understands those dynamics better than anyone because we are very privileged to be joined today by Agnes Baekelandt, or Agnes Baekelandt Regenvanu, I should say, to use her full name. Agnes wears a number of hats, like many people in this region. One of those is the chief executive of a very well-known New Zealand brand called Barkers of Geraldine, but also Agnes is the head of the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, and that is, of course, the business council based in New Zealand that oversees and looks after growing relations between business communities in the French Pacific and New Zealand. Now, as we'll find out through our conversation today, Agnes, her connections to the region are broader even than that because, of course, she has a very strong family connection into Vanuatu as well and has worked for a long time in economic development as well as business across the region. Agnes, bonjour, bienvenue, and welcome to the Pisanisi Pod.
Yeah, kia ora, Dave and Glenn. Very excited to be with you this morning.
Yeah, bonjour, Agnes. And so as Dave said, I'm one of those people who really doesn't know a whole lot about the French Polynesia or New Caledonia. I sort of researched before coming on the show today. I kind of realized how little I did know. So I'm really excited to learn from you today as well as our listeners.
I'll try to be up to expectations then.
I'm sure you will. And I think that's probably a great segue into our first question, because as usual on the show, we like to begin by asking our listeners to introduce and talk a little to their own story.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in France, but I grew up in the most magical island called Nukuhiva. So Nukuhiva is part of the Marquesas Island in French Polynesia, very remote. So to get there, you need to go to Tahiti, to Papeete, and then it's about a 3 hours flight from Tahiti and to get there.
Wow.
It's a volcanic island, like black sand, dark ferns, very little tourism, so authentic, very proud of their culture, traditions. And I grew up just fishing, singing, and enjoying the island life. When I was in high school, my family had to move. Totally broke my heart. And I promised that I would come back and live in the Pacific one day. My family next move was the most extreme move you can think of because I went to another French island called Saint-Pierre, which is south of Newfoundland, close to Greenland.
Oh, wow.
So I ran from Marquesas Island to minus 30 degrees. I loved it. It was amazing. I never promised myself I would be back to the cold. And then when I finished high school, I just had one dream. It was to work in development and non-for-profit. I was only 16 and my family told me that maybe it was a bit young to go and live in a foreign developing country and I had time to save the world. So I've been kind of forced into studying. I went to Paris for a business school, thinking at least I would get the skills to work for NGOs and non-for-profit. So I worked in development in Nepal. I worked in Morocco. I worked in Kenya. But then I really became aware that France was facing also a significant social issue around immigration and a real difficulty to integrate and accept migrant families into the country. So I went back to France to work on a program to promote integration. And then when I came back to France and worked on this program, I met a man who absolutely changed my life. He was the owner of a business called Andros. They were mainly in jam and food processing. So this is the business behind this kind of jam that you can see everywhere, the Bon Maman. And he accepted to sponsor. So I met him as a sponsor of my development activities and program, but quickly he asked me to join the business and to develop all the non-for-profit activities of Andros. So it was 22 years ago, and I'm still working with him today. So, and I created one of the first corporate social responsibility departments in France, and I ended managing for Andros everything around government relationship, public relationship, people, social, environmental project, everything that was about spending the money that other people were, doing a lot to earn for the business. And then another day changed my life. I came to New Zealand in 2011. And the day I landed in Auckland, it just felt like home, like something unbelievable. It was like a mega version of the island I grew up in. Like same roads, same vibe, same people, and just, I came back from New Zealand and I said, I'm sorry guys, but I'm moving to the Pacific. So they allowed me to come at one condition, that I stop spending their money and I start making money for them, for a change. And so I could say that my love for the Pacific took me to the dark side of the business, and leaving the non-for-profit activities to enter the business world. I created our first subsidiary in Australia in 2013. I'm still managing the Australian business remotely. And I received a call from Michael Barker from Geraldine, who was looking for investors. And I came to Geraldine in December 2014. And I just fell in love with the business, with the people, with the products, the community. And I organized Andros investment into Barkers at that time. I joined the board, and then I moved to New Zealand 9 years ago. And I have been Barkers chief executive for the past 9 years, and I have loved every minute of it. I became a Kiwi. And before that, I met my now husband, Marley, who is from Vanuatu. And there I fell in love again, with a new family, new place, a new culture, and going from Polynesia to Melanesia, and my heart cannot choose anymore.
Well, that's quite a story. Thank you for sharing. It's amazing. And I love the passion of just the way your life turned in terms of, I landed and I fell in love with it. And so, yeah, this was it.
I also like it as well, Agnes, and I can see, because for our listeners' awareness, Agnes is currently dialing in from Geraldine, which is the corporate home of Barkers of Geraldine. A fun fact as well for our listeners: my family heritage is from Geraldine as well. My mother's father grew up on a farm in Four Peaks, just outside of Geraldine, and so actually the mountains in the background of Agnes's office are very familiar. I guess that conditioning that you had in St. Pierre has probably helped acclimatize you to the 1 degree Celsius that you're currently dealing with down there. You've got this connection across pretty much every single part of the French Pacific, and including Vanuatu, which is we don't include as part of the French territories, but of course has a very, very strong historical and cultural connection to France, as well as to those French territories in the region. You're uniquely well placed to talk about, what that region is and what it means. What do you see being in New Zealand amongst the business community that New Zealand or Australian or other businesses might commonly not understand or not appreciate about the significance of that region?
Yeah, and it will be very quick, but it could be historical. Because actually we have before being French, French Pacific was Pacific Islands, and people came from eastward, from New Guinea, Solomon Islands into the Pacific. So it was about 3,000 years ago. They reached Fiji, Polynesia, Tonga, Samoa. 1,000 years ago, they went to East Polynesia, so Tahiti and the islands, and then moved to the Marquesas Island. And from the Marquesas Island, they went either to Hawaii, to Rapa Nui, and to New Zealand. About in 1,200, something like that. And the connection is so strong. And when I grew up speaking Maori, so Marquesian Maori, and when I moved to New Zealand, I can understand Te Reo, which is insane. There are so many similarities because of that. So this is really the same history and the same culture. Becoming French has been, later in the years, but a very strong heritage. So for me, there is the Pacific. There is not the French or non-French Pacific, and we have very common roots, arts, culture, points of reference, beliefs, and so on. So that's for the history. On the commercial part, so as you said, like what people don't know and you introduce it is that French Pacific is the second trade partner for New Zealand, a bit above $500 million trade. So just after Fiji, a very affluent market. Demand for high quality products and the French Pacific benefits from a very strong legal framework, institutional stability, very low level of corruption, very stable currency because it's indexed on euro, strong GDP per capita. New Caledonia, very strong subsidies and incentive from French government. When you invest, there is a high support for tax incentive, financial incentive, loan incentive to invest. And also something that, we don't realize that there is a massive interest or fascination for the Maori economy, in Tahiti and New Caledonia. And they want to understand the Maori business model. They want to inspire their own model with it. And there is a real clear opportunity to connect the Maori economy and French Pacific to learn and grow and develop. Things that people may not know as well, that there is the economy in the French Pacific is dominated by a few wealthy families. Very difficult to succeed without, knowing or partnering them. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but beautiful culture of, living in the present. Some days we can bother, some days we can't bother, and tomorrow is already quite a long time ahead. So this is across the two islands. And then French Polynesia and New Caledonia are quite different territories. Like it's as if you were comparing, I don't know, Cook Island and Tonga or Solomon Islands. So very different culture, heritage, and way of doing business. So, there is definitely not one French Pacific, absolutely. So if you go to French Polynesia, it's in the middle of the Pacific, so halfway between Asia and Americas. It's a massive territory, about 5 million square kilometers, but only 4,000 square kilometers of land area. So very small land area, but massive ocean area, 120 islands, and 80 of them are inhabited. 280,000 people, same as New Caledonia, but very different landscape. High GDP per capita, strong domestic airline network, good international connection, so very modern infrastructure, very strong compliance, very strong quality standards, so quite modernized economy. Nice tropical oceanic climate, going quite wild, but not a strong industrial culture, which is very different from New Caledonia. So the key strategic areas for French Polynesia will be number one, tourism, about 15% of the GDP, number one economy. But tourism is mainly USA and France. 80% of tourists comes from USA or France. So there is a massive opportunity for Asia, for the Pacific to work and bring and add value to tourism in French Polynesia, because if you take US and France, there is really no one coming to French Polynesia. And when I talk about tourism, I talk about infrastructure, they are missing many beds. There is a real lack of bed and accommodation in French Polynesia, massive opportunity to invest, opportunity for food business, because when you grow tourism, you have, food service opportunities, hospital opportunities. And then the second, activity is pearls. So primary sectors and pearls. Pearls is 80% of Tahiti export is pearl.
Wow.
So that's a big business here. Then there is fishing, aquaculture, vanilla, copra, monoi, and all the primary sectors. And then Tahiti wants to develop digital tech. There is really good optical fiber connection, very strong tech culture, really good research universities and training facilities. And the last part will be around energy transition, renewable energy, and the government is going to put a lot of money on energy transition.
I was fascinated in the black pearl trade. I hadn't realized that, and I certainly didn't know it was as significant as what you're talking about.
Tahiti is one of the biggest marine reserves in the world. They have protected the sea and the ocean. So the respect and the protection of the French Polynesia Ocean is critical, and they have heavily invested in protecting. So it's still, I love scuba diving. So wherever I go, I scuba dive, and the most beautiful, submarine landscape I ever had was in French Polynesia.
Oh, wow.
With no doubt. Yeah, because it's really preserved and protected.
It
So
is a stunning place, and of course that industry is a very significant one, and we should probably give a shout out to another friend of the show and a good friend of New Zealand, which is Philippe Vasseur, who is the, among many things, the New Zealand's honorary consul in French Polynesia, and has built a very strong business in the pearl trade. Our family owns a few pearls, some from Cook Islands, some from French Polynesia, and I can attest to their quality and value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So New Caledonia, very different.
Yeah.
Very big main island, about 18,000 square meters. In one island, it's more than 4 times all the 120 islands of Polynesia together. About the same number of people, very high GDP per capita. Great flights to most of the Pacific nations and international as well. So really well connected, strong research and development ecosystem, and very strong entrepreneurship. There is a lot of small and medium businesses in New Caledonia. Same location as Vanuatu, really good position between Australia, New Zealand, and Asia Pacific. So, which is much less US America's influence in New Caledonia. And I think New Caledonia may be the most industrialized nation of the Pacific Islands. Thanks to, as you were saying, nickel mineral extraction. New Caledonia is the biggest global natural reserve of nickel. There is 3 massive metallurgic plants, which mean that if there is those plants, there is infrastructure, there is transport, there is freight, there is industry, there is energy, there is skills, there is constructors. So, I mean, everything that goes around is existing and available in New Caledonia, and it will really enable the nation to diversify and extend to other industries, I think. So 4 key pillars, for anyone who wants to invest in New Caledonia to approach the market. Number 1 is construction. Big, massive. I mean, there is a reconstruction and a big plan in New Caledonia at the moment. They talk about 3 billion euro that will be invested in a way in the next few years in New Caledonia. It will be complex, but it will be really worthwhile to explore. Second one is all around the blue economy, boat maintenance, aquaculture, high sea fishing, biotech, recycling of boats. So New Caledonia really wants to invest and promote the blue economy. Third one around tech, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, data centers, training, strong investment in tech. And the last one, like the same as French Polynesia, is green transition, renewable energy, energy storage, decarbonization, waste management, everything around the green transition. So lots of opportunities as well, and significant budget and incentives to get there too. So really 2 territories that are worth exploring for sure. Yeah.
I think New Caledonia accounts for something like 25% of the world's entire nickel capability and reserve, which is a huge number for such a, small population. But of course, it's a very energy intensive business, requires an awful lot of electricity to refine the raw nickel. And like much of the Pacific, operating off a lot of legacy fossil fuel generated electricity, that's a very expensive proposition. And I think, with the kind of big price collapse that occurred a couple of years ago with the world's nickel price, it's recovered slightly, but still relatively below where it used to be historically. Reducing that cost base into the New Caledonian nickel refining industry has got to really tell an energy story, and I think that seems to me to be driving a lot of that conversation around greening that energy mix, because it's got a real economic payoff for that industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Some plants have shut, one has reopened, but there is critical environmental impact and 100%. Yeah.
I was going to say before, it's probably also a good segue into talking about the chamber and the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce that you're heavily engaged with, Agnes, and particularly I think the upcoming mission that you have to French Polynesia and New Caledonia, and sort of just exploring a little bit about what you're hoping to achieve from that, because listening to you in terms of the things that are happening in the future, it sounds like an incredibly exciting time to be on that mission.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to correct, I'm not the president anymore, because I stepped down a few months ago. So I'm vice president of the chamber now. And really the chamber, so it's about, bilateral trade between New Zealand, French Pacific. And we really support a community of Kiwi French entrepreneurs and businesses through events, networking, and services. And I created the French Pacific Committee 6 years ago because when I joined the chamber, I said, okay, we trade with France, we support bilateral trade, but we have like those French Pacific neighbors and there is such an untapped potential. So, and now we feel ready to get to the next step, which is to take Kiwi businesses to the French Pacific. It's not straightforward for Kiwi businesses to go to the French Pacific, and there is a few barriers to entry that makes things complex. Number one, there is a very small diaspora of French Pacifica in New Zealand compared to other nations. And then language is a massive barrier. When you want to create relationship, when you want to build trust, when you want to organize contracts, when you want to present services, to label products, to develop tech products, when you have to choose between French and English or when you need to master both, it's not easy. Kiwis don't speak a lot of French and French Pacific people don't speak a lot of English. Third reason, regulations and rules are quite complex and quite protectionist in the French Pacific. And local industries, when they exist, they're really protected by strong barriers to entry. Then it's quite expensive nations. Labor is quite expensive. Talked about the GDP. So when you want to import or export, everything is more priced than other Pacific nations.
Right.
And maybe the last thing as well, there is a bit of a comfort for French Pacific to trade or work with France as well.
Right.
For language reason, but also, I work in retail and food industry. All the supermarkets over there are under French banners and can access directly the common platform of their French sister companies. So it's quite easy to do. So it requires more effort to connect with the rest of the Pacific. So, it's not anything that is impossible, but the reason why it hasn't been that straightforward is all the reasons. So we want to unlock that. And we want to prove that actually behind, a few barriers that are not that difficult to overcome, there is strong opportunities. And I love to think that when something is difficult, it's great. Because if it's difficult for me, it's difficult for others as well. So if I make the efforts, maybe the other ones won't make the effort. So I will have a competitive advantage. So it's worth the effort, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why. So we are going to, if we secure the sponsorship and the funds, we are going to be in Tahiti in Papeete on the 29-30 September, 1st October. And then we will be in Numea in Caledonia on the 5th and 6th of October. So for those who want to have a weekend in Caledonia in between, there is a direct flight between Tahiti and Numea. So yeah, a big week of French Pacific, and we have a lot of requests already. We have around 40 pre-registration already.
Wow.
So we are amazed by the interest that it has triggered. And yeah, very, very exciting. And we can't wait to bring Kiwi businesses in discovering or rediscovering the French Pacific.
Well, this is a great opportunity, I think, for a call to action for anyone listening that might be interested in that mission. So we're talking with Agnes Baekelandt, Vanu, who is the Vice President of the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, and organising an upcoming mission to both French Polynesia and New Caledonia at the end of September, start of October. Well, that will be an unparalleled opportunity, I think, for anyone considering the French Pacific territories there. This really is a once in a several year opportunity that shouldn't be missed for anyone, I think, who's interested in that part of the region.
I should note it, but as well, MFAT and NZT and PTI are part as well of the mission and are very strong supporters.
You can certainly count on, I'm sure, the support of all of those agencies.
Before we move on, I just wondered, you mentioned 40 companies are kind of pre-registered. Can you give us an idea of what sort of companies you're likely to have on the mission?
So quite variety of sizes, from smaller entrepreneurs to medium businesses to corporate. So lots of infrastructure businesses. And second family of industries is food and beverages. Third one will be professional services and marine services, energy, tech, and tourism. So quite a broad,
great spread.
Great spread. And a big half of them have already engaged with the French Pacific in a way or started to create connection or to inquire. A smaller half is absolutely first time entrant and have never dealt with French Pacific.
Wow. Yeah, great spread of companies, which is for somebody organising it is both a challenge and a good thing, right? Because it's great to have that variety, but B, then you've got to make sure you have a program that delivers value for everybody and their diverse needs.
When we may as well be very realistic. If we feel that some of the companies who registered will not have enough exposure or, will be too niche as a start, we may offer them to do the next one next year to make sure we focus on meaningful and worthwhile contacts as well. We will have to be realistic.
We're talking to Agnes Baekelandt, who is the Vice President of the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce and someone very, very well versed in the entirety of the French Pacific. Agnes, we're coming towards the end of our conversation now, and I wonder if we could take a slight diversion, because I mentioned your other surname, and you've also talked about your husband and that connection that he has into Vanuatu. And I wonder if we could just talk a little bit about Vanuatu. I'm not sure if you heard one of our recent podcasts, but we were speaking with John Stokes, who of course is running Dynamic Supplies over in Port Vila, and spoke very optimistically and positively about the opportunities in that market, notwithstanding some of the rebuilding challenges that it's facing at the moment from the big earthquake that it suffered a couple of years ago.
As you said, so my husband is an Ivan, and I have the most amazing in-law family. They are from Malekula, but living now in Efate, and they made me fall in love with Vanuatu. And my in-law family are really politically engaged, and I have such an admiration for their love for their country, their ethics, their integrity, and their dedication to make Vanuatu a better place to live for the future generations. And we talk a lot about resilience, but when you go to Vanuatu, you really understand what resilience means. And despite all those disasters, the economy is still continuing to grow by about 4% per year, non-stop, which is incredible. And the growth is enabled by tourism, mainly Australian and New Zealand. Then, of course, there has been the infrastructure reconstruction that boosted a little bit the economy, and a few government subsidies. And governments really want to support citizens, businesses, and they believe and they invest in the rebound of the economy. Cruise ships are back in 26. That will help the recovery as well. Half of the businesses in Vanuatu are under 10 people. And you really need this very strong resilience to make it work. And they make it work. I agree with John, and I listened to his interview, and I'm not an expert of Vanuatu economy, but I feel very optimistic and positive. Even more if we believe that actually this is about supporting, investing, training, upskilling, and really support Vanuatu to create a sustainable business model. It's not about coming one-off and trying to push products or whatever. It's more really, really investing with and for people. For me, the next big step will be around primary produces. Vanuatu has a subtropical climate, rainfall, sunshine, amazing soil. I mean, this is the best islands for agricultural production. So manufacturing is the big next one. For me, there is being able to have this agricultural development, and then to develop industry and manufacturing to retain the value. If you can process and sell with added value, serve your own hospitality businesses, but as well to export, this is where you become independent.
I also wonder, before we finish the talanoa, whether you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the Barkers business.
I mean, it's quite funny because Barkers, you can find Barkers product in the Pacific. And sometimes I get into the island and I see a Barkers product. I say, how come this product has arrived there? So what I realized that actually, historically, Barkers have supplied businesses who are grouping, goods in New Zealand, and then going through island from island and trying to sell at the door of the containers. So Barkers used to be in the Pacific, but in a very opportunistic and non-strategic way. So what I have been trying to change now is to say, okay, we know where we go. We work directly with importers. We work directly with supermarkets. And quite interestingly, we have more and more retailers contacting us and wanting directly to work with us and to represent Barkers in the Pacific, and there is more and more requests for added value, premium, more and more foodies in the Pacific Islands who want to experiment. Now we work with people in Samoa, American Samoa, Cook Islands. You will see a lot of Barkers in Cook Island nowadays, I think, because we get quite strong. We are in Vanuatu. I mean, we are.
I certainly consume a lot of it.
and so that's amazing, but for me that's not what I mean, I love it and I love seeing the product of Barkers, but I don't want to be a business who takes and doesn't give instead. So for me the first step is great. We have connection, we develop friendship, and we are visible. What I really want one day is that to be able to invest in industrial capacity in the islands and to enable growers and communities to grow from the land and to bring our knowledge and to bring our skills to enable them to do what we do. I would dream of a Barkers from the Pacific made in the Pacific Islands, not made from New Zealand. So my dream is that Barkers will become an enabler to industrialize agriculture and food in the Pacific rather than just exporting. Yeah.
So even though you moved to the dark side of business, Agnes, your economic development heart is still there, right?
I really believe in it. When you create value, you create wealth, you give people a better job, better conditions. So even the way I will lead a business, or a for-profit business will be to make sure actually, we create better environment for people to live around. But I'll go back to NGOs or non-for-profit world one day, and it will be in the Pacific, and hopefully it will be in Vanuatu as a start.
Well, there you have it. The CEO of New Zealand's probably largest premium fruit processor. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who knows more what they're talking about than Agnes. So I think that's a great testament to the opportunity, and really your background would have to be a phenomenal asset, not just for the Barkers business, but also, for the Pacific region. We're coming to the end of the conversation, and I guess one thing that some of our listeners might be listening to and thinking about the French Pacific, it's got this incredible connection, certainly to New Zealand through both geography, through New Caledonia, the closest Pacific territory to New Zealand, and also that historical connection that you've mentioned through that Māori relationship between, that Tuamotu archipelago, the French Polynesian part of the Polynesia, and the migration patterns to New Zealand. And of course, it has that modern day French overlay. Where do you see that kind of evolution going in terms of the relationship with New Zealand, with Australia, with the kind of regional partners?
So if we start with New Caledonia, there has been a provincial election a couple of weeks ago. They are going to form a new government by the end of the month, and there has been an agreement with France in 2025 that there is a full change of status with New Caledonia. There will be double nationality, French and Kanak nationality, and then actually the pro-France parties, ended being having a majority in the new government as well. I think there is a strong willingness from New Caledonia people in general to find a balance and positive way to get the best of both worlds and a better social peace and system. So I have no doubt that Australia and New Zealand will become key partners for New Caledonia very shortly, and that it is a condition for economic stability, and it's also a condition for political stability. I'm very positive prior when we have more and more Caledonian businesses who want to come to New Zealand and New Caledonia, who give it a try, who set up their companies. So I really believe it will develop. For French Polynesia, it's a much more stable situation politically. The same, it's autonomous nation sharing responsibilities between French government, Polynesian governments. But we work with the two CCIs, so the two Chamber of Commerce of New Caledonia and of French Polynesia. And part of their priorities is to develop trade and opportunities with New Zealand and Australia. So it's clearly into their economic plan to be a Pacific player, to trade with their neighbors. I have no doubt that within 10 years, we will have a very different conversation. And the trade will have grown, and bilateral trade will have grown. No doubt.
I think that is a great. I think that's a great comment. I very much agree with it, and a really good place probably to leave the conversation. The Talanoa today has been with Agnes Baekelandt Raganvanu, who as we've heard throughout this very, very deep and wide-ranging conversation, has experience and connections so broadly across the Pacific region, particularly the French Pacific territories, and of course also Vanuatu. We've talked about some of those geographical, historical, and economic connections and opportunities that exist across the region. And what better way to know more about them than to join the mission that Agnes and her colleagues are organising with the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce in late September and early October. Hopefully this has been an episode that's opened people's eyes to the incredible opportunity and connection that exists across there. So Agnes, once again, merci beaucoup. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I really look forward to catching up again on the pod and outside.
Thank you. You guys have an amazing French accent, so you should continue to explore that. You're both very skilled with French accent. Very impressed.
So amazing to tap into that and have that discussion with Agnes. I wasn't aware of how important economically the French Pacific was and that size of their economies, the GDP. Agnes was also very frank about some of the barriers and some of the difficulties about trading in that market. One of her quotes that I loved is, "If it's difficult for me, it's difficult for others as well. So don't let the difficulties necessarily dissuade you from going there and giving it a try." And of course, this upcoming mission that they've got will be an amazing opportunity to understand that in some depth.
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. I thought that was a great quote of hers. If it's difficult for her, it's certainly going to be very challenging for people that don't share her background and certainly French language capability. I remember when I first went to New Caledonia, and some people who listen to the show and may have known that I've lived in Europe before. I lived in Belgium, and so I speak basic conversational French. And my goodness, I had to put all of that to use when I was in New Caledonia. It required me to use more French than even visiting in France. It is very important to have that either language capability within yourself or someone alongside you that can help. But as Agnes said, people are super friendly in both of those markets and try their absolute best. I think we touched on it a little bit at the end. One of the sort of flip sides to the recent and ongoing political challenges that those places have experienced is, I think, a greater willingness across the economy to integrate more with the near region. Both of those territories are members of the Pacific Island Forum. They're not part of the, trade arrangements in the region like PACER Plus, but certainly I think there's been a lot of interest in both of those markets in exploring how they can better grow their economic connections between New Zealand and Australia. And, this mission, which is the first one that I'm aware of, certainly in the last 5 to 6 years, is a really, really unmissable opportunity, I think, for people from certainly New Zealand to get along and see what it's all about.
Yeah, so if I was to go on that mission, I would need to upgrade my French a little bit. Otherwise, all I'm going to be able to do is drink coffee, because all I can do is un café, s'il vous plaît.
Yep. That's good, Glenn. I think, certainly a lot to work on. And, fortunately for someone of your tastes, the wine is probably a good way to work your way into it. So you might have to swap your Man of War Syrahs for a few Bordeaux. I'm sure you'll find ways to embrace the culture.
Well, anyway, Dave, I thought that was fantastic talking to Agnes. And yes, for anybody who is interested in that mission, I will put the link to their website in the show notes. Dave, and other things that have been going on this week, I just want to do a quick shout out to my friends at the Pacific Arts part of Creative New Zealand. Creative New Zealand announced this week they're going through a quite significant restructure. So I just know it's a kind of difficult time for all the people there. And so a particular shout out to Margarita, who we had on the show a few weeks ago, and Ali, who I worked with quite closely there.
Yeah, good shout out, Glenn. I thought that was a fantastic talanoa with Margarita, and it's always tough going through some restructures like that. And I think Margarita foreshadowed a little bit of that in her comments.
Yeah, you did right. And throughout that, Margarita did kind of emphasise the whole time that the commitment to Pacific Arts is still as strong as ever, despite the restructure. So just hope they're both doing all right through what will be a difficult period. Hey, Dave, other news in the region this week. I mean, one of the things I thought was particularly impressive and looked brilliant given the timing was the new announcement or the opening of a massive new solar project in Niue.
This is a really, really exciting one. For anyone who's more interested in knowing a bit more about the economy and reality of life in UA, another shout out for one of our earlier episodes with Jesse Corey-Slow, who's the GM of the UA Development Bank. But as you've mentioned, UA has become possibly one of the first countries to effectively fully solarize its power generation across the entire island grid. And as anyone will recall from that episode with Jesse, UA is actually a small population, but a big place. So twice the size geographically of Rarotonga, something like 75 square kilometers. So it's not tiny, and a really, really impressive feat, I think, to now create a power generation facility through solar and battery that can ensure that the entire country now is powered by renewable energies. It's been funded, of course, through both the government of Niue and the government of New Zealand, and credit to both of those organisations. Being a business show, I think we should really give a shout out to some friends of ours and friends of the show in the company Sunergize, which is the New Zealand renewable energy business that has installed and delivered that facility. So to Paul Makumbe, who's the managing director, Rick Swan, who's the head of Pacific for them, and the entire team there, who I know has worked very, very hard over many weeks and months in creating that facility. What a great testament to their ingenuity.
Yeah, it sounds like there's quite a couple of firsts or quite difficult challenges from an engineering and, I guess, an electronic perspective.
I was talking to Rick from Sunergize a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about the one of the key tests that they needed to show was that they could basically cold start the grid, which, the way he described it, it sounds like a jump-starting a car, but jump-starting an entire electricity grid. And doing that, traditionally, that's all been done by generators, and the prevailing assumption was that you would need some residual diesel generation capability to be able to do that if you needed to. But they've basically, he said, managed to successfully prove that it can be done from the battery itself. So, really, really impressive, and I think, a great thing to be able to showcase the evolving technology in the solar and renewable space.
Yeah, and just some of the data for Niue, that's going to save them 1.2 million litres of diesel fuel per annum, which is a cost of roughly 4 million New Zealand dollars, which for a small economy like Niue is very significant, let alone then the things that we've talked about in terms of resilience in the way the world is at the moment, with the fuel crisis kind of hopping back into gear again, and meaning that they have, a much stronger sovereignty over their own energy.
Absolutely. And I think I saw the headline this morning that, what are we talking, Brent crude's back up over $100 a barrel. So, with the renewed tensions up in the Middle East. So, yes, very, very timely. That may not have been on the minds of those planners and putting it together when this project was first mooted, but gosh, it's really underlining the value right now.
And Dave, just following on from the Talanoa we had the other week with George Constantino from Constantino Group, you were mentioning that the PNG Investment Conference is coming up very soon in early August.
One of the things that George mentioned in that conversation was that it's really important for anyone who's interested in doing business in PNG to be aware of and, if possible, attend some of the many conferences that do take place either in or about Papua New Guinea. And a bit of a shout out for one that I know is coming up in the next couple of weeks and is one of the big ones, and certainly one that's worth being on the radar of anyone interested in PNG, and that is the Business Advantage PNG Conference. Now, that's coming up on the 10th and the 11th of August in Brisbane, and I can certainly attest to the fact that it draws in a lot of, if not all of, the main names of people that are engaged in, invested in from PNG.
And Dave, for you this week ahead, you're off to Fiji, I believe.
I know, Glenn. I'm super excited, and I haven't actually had time to kind of reach out to too many people about it. So maybe people are hearing it here on the show first. But
breaking news.
Me and the family will be. Yeah, big news, breaking news, exactly. Me and the family will be heading across to Suva again for a few days. I'll be in and out of the office and cafes and various places, catching up with some of my close friends. I'm really, really looking forward to getting back to Suva. It's a place that's very, very dear to my heart, having lived there for 5 years. And I think we're actually going to be spending a little bit of time out at one of the most beautiful islands in Fiji, which is the island of Leluvia. So anyone who's in Suva, please reach out. It'd be great to catch up while I'm there between Wednesday and Friday of the week coming.
Mate, you're going to love that. No wonder you're smiling so much right now. So look, Dave, that's the big thing for the week ahead for you. For me, it will be my last week working at NZTE coming up. So, I've got my own sort of excitement around that. Excitement, anxiety, trepidation, not quite sure which, but it's going to be a big week anyway. So with that week ahead, Dave, would you like to read us out for the show for this week?
Definitely, Glenn. Yeah, no, all the feelings I'm sure will be going through the mind at the moment. And but I'm sure that everyone listening to this show and also from NZTE will be coming together to celebrate the incredible contribution that you've made to that organisation and to New Zealand businesses, not just in this part of the world, but your previous roles in China and North America as well. And from me and all of our listeners, I'm sure we'll be wishing you all the best. But of course, we will have the pleasure of hearing much more from you in this show, continuing that feedback that we get from our awesome listening and watching community that's dialing in to hear the show. You can hear us, of course, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and full colour on YouTube. It's great to see that momentum that we're getting in the listenership, and of course the conversation that we're having with our listeners. You can get in touch with us through any of the social media channels. Of course, LinkedIn is the one that we use the most often, but also you can email us through our dedicated email address, 2.palagi@gmail.com. That's 2.palagi@gmail.com. Plenty of more exciting topics and people coming up in the pipeline. It's really, really exciting to think about the weeks ahead. But in the meantime, this has been Two Palagi in a Pisanesi pod for the week ending 25 July.